Episode 3, The Grand Unified Theory. Here, I will cover many of its different firefighter safety mechanisms and how they interact. The IRPG represents over 100 years of lessons learned from wildland firefighting. Those lessons came with a high price tag. Each tragedy had its own investigation that often resulted in a new mitigation measure. Sometimes existing lists were modified or updated. Other times, new lists were created with overlapping content. These are 8 of the lists represented in the IRPG, showing 64 factors to learn and remember. There is no question that 10 and 18 are mainstays of wildland firefighting. Thousands of firefighters use this system annually. However, few people, even seasoned veterans, can actually remember all 28 factors under stress, let alone the full 64. In an attempt to create a life safety mechanism that was easy to learn, remember, and implement, Paul Gleason introduced LCES: Lookouts, Communications, Escape Routes, and Safety Zones. LCES quickly became the buzzword of the wildland community. While it's an invaluable tool, it isn't always used correctly. Now it is commonly recognized that LCES is a hazard mitigation process. This means that proper situational awareness and hazard identification is required to function properly. Many have pointed to a look-up, look-down, look-around process to assess the 7 environmental factors and their respective indicators. A similar process was introduced by Brad Mayhew, called FLCES Delta, where the F stands for studying fire behavior, LCES is self-explanatory, and Delta is Greek for change, meaning to adapt to changing conditions. When you look at fire behavior, you use the look-up, look-down, look-around factors, so this really is the same process we just talked about, but it adds in a reminder that this is a constant process requiring us to adapt to changing fire conditions. A third similar process was introduced by Patrick Weathen, called the 10 Essential Firefighting Factors. He took the 60 factors in these 7 lists and grouped them into 10 subsets. When you look at the column headings, you'll notice a similarity to LCES Delta. To identify fireground hazards, you look at fuel source topography and current fire status. This gives us the information we need to predict future fire behavior. Next, we mitigate hazards using LCES, and then we're ready to engage the fire with our resources. But the foundation of fireline safety is the 10 standard fire orders. The method we use to apply those orders is the risk management process. Pull out your IRPG and flip to page 1 in the green section. Tactical plans cannot be made without ensuring that standard firefighting orders are followed. In relatively low complexity assignments, this can be done intuitively based on experience. In more complex situations, firefighters need to have an organized decision-making process that ensures the standard firefighting orders are being followed. In a changing environment, this is a continuous cycle of assessment and evaluation. Let's start with the fire orders. Who can name all 10? They're printed on the back of your IRPG. Remember that the fire orders are broken into 4 categories. The first 3 fire orders look at fire behavior. The next 3 deal with fireline safety, 3 for organizational control, and 1 for overall safety. Back to risk management. Situational awareness, hazard assessment, hazard mitigation, decision point, and evaluate. Situational awareness is the foundation of risk management process. Without a good understanding of a situation, it's difficult to make a good decision. The first step in situational awareness is to gather information. Who's in charge? What's the plan? What's your assignment? But what about the fire? The first fire order addresses fire weather, but if you really think about it, I think it means the 7 fire environment factors of look up, look down, look around. So you gather all the environmental data you can before the fire bell even rings. Then you can update and gather more information en route. On-scene gives you even more data. Start creating a mental model of the fire based on indicators you've seen before you even engage the fire. Once you actually see what the fire is doing, scout. Add these observations to your mental model. You are still looking at the 7 environmental factors, but now you can actually see what the fire is doing, how far it is spread, and where it's going. You'll also notice that these columns correlate to the common denominators, also found on page 5 of your IRPG. The next step in risk management is assessing hazards. The IRPG says to use the look up, look down, look around indicators, which we already are, and the common tactical hazards, which is found on IRPG page 6. Remember to estimate potential hazards and plan for the worst case scenarios. Also consider severity versus probability. The third step in risk management is mitigating the hazards that you have identified or predicted in step 2. Use the fire orders, LCES, anchor points, and downhill checklist if applicable, and any other factor you can find. Flip the page and you'll see LCES, safety zones, and the downhill checklist are next in the IRPG. Many don't like the LACES acronym, but it fits in here perfectly. The next step is to implement those controls, which also brings you to your decision point. Are controls in place? Are tactics based on fire behavior? Have instructions been given and understood? Do you have control of those assigned to you? Does everyone know the org chart, their position in it, and their assignment? Here's where you make your go, no-go decision and decide if you're going to engage the fire. Next in the RPG is the indicators of incident complexity, which will also help in your decision-making process. The last step of risk management is to supervise and evaluate. Always be thinking, if this happens, what do I do? What do I do next? Here we can see the 10 essential firefighting factors at work. The original author used the term resources, but I prefer engage, as it correlates directly to decision point. So here you can see that all these separate processes are actually symbiotic, different ways of saying the exact same thing. When used correctly, these processes are a systematic, fluid model for firefighter safety in a dynamic fire environment. But none of this makes any sense if it's not based on fire behavior and changing conditions. One of the most common things mentioned in fatality investigations is that no one expected the fire to blow up, meaning that the fire behavior was not adequately predicted. Fuels, weather, and fire conditions must be continually monitored. Several cheat sheets and fire calculation programs are available to help you predict fire behavior.